you find a certain curiosity or an excitement about someone's facility at hiding, or their use of deception to hide their evil, cancerous underside.
James Spader built one of Hollywood's most distinctive careers by consistently choosing complexity over comfort.
I know that's what I'm always fascinated by.
His first major film role came in 1981 when he played Brooke Shields' brother in Endless Love. Throughout the early 80s, he appeared in television movies and smaller film parts, and in 1985, he landed his first starring role in Tough Turf, a teen gang film where he played alongside his friend Robert Downey Jr. But he rose to stardom with 1986's Pretty in Pink, and the way he got that role tells you everything you need to know about the career that followed. James Spader wasn't supposed to play the villain in Pretty in Pink. He was offered the role of Blaine, the romantic lead, the guy who gets the girl at the end, and he turned it down. Spader specifically asked to play Steph McKee instead, Blaine's wealthy best friend and the film's primary antagonist, because, as he later explained, he found it more fun to play the villain. That decision launched everything that followed. Written by John Hughes and directed by Howard Deutsch, Pretty in Pink became one of the defining films of the Brat Pack era when it came out in 1986. The story follows Andy Walsh, a working-class girl from the wrong side of the tracks played by Molly Ringwald, who finds herself caught between two worlds when Blaine McDonough, a wealthy preppy kid played by Andrew McCarthy, asks her to prom. The film also stars John Cryer as Ducky, Andy's best friend hopelessly in love with her, and Harry Dean Stanton as her struggling father. For Spader, choosing the villain over the hero role started a pattern that would define the next 15 years of his career, always gravitating toward characters operating in moral gray zones, the ones audiences loved to hate but couldn't stop watching. Steph is pure entitled cruelty wrapped in expensive clothes and a contemptuous smirk. Spader played that polished menace so effectively that critics gave him a nickname that stuck, Mr. Sneer. Based on Bret Easton Ellis's controversial novel about wealthy Los Angeles teenagers drowning in drugs and privilege, Spader was cast as Rip, a cold, calculating drug dealer owed $50,000 by Julian, played by Robert Downey Jr. Directed by Marek Kaniewska, the story follows Clay, played by Andrew McCarthy, who returns home to Los Angeles for Christmas break from his East Coast college, only to find his ex-girlfriend Blair, played by Jamie Gertz, and his best friend Julian spiraling into addiction and self-destruction. Julian owes Rip a fortune he can't pay back, and Rip isn't the type to forgive debt, which sets the film's desperate stakes. Spader's Rip represents a more dangerous evolution of his villain persona. Roger Ebert described the character's chilling rationality, noting Rip's calm assertion that he's not the problem, Julian is. Critics pointed out the reptilian look in Spader's eyes that makes the performance work, the way his oily, low-key gregariousness turns threatening in an instant, despite barely changing the tone of his voice. Author Bret Easton Ellis, who initially hated the adaptation, admitted that the film bears no resemblance to his novel, but that it captured a certain youth culture during that decade that no other movie caught, and felt that it was miscast with the exception of Downey and Spader. Years later, Spader reflected on watching Downey's real-life struggles mirror his character's descent, saying he found him heartbreaking in Less Than Zero, and heartbreaking at the time. Steven Soderbergh was 26 years old and looking for actors who could give performances he hadn't already seen from them when he discovered James Spader. The script for Sex, Lies, and Videotape had been written in just 8 days, and Soderbergh needed someone who could make the lead character, Graham Dalton, both disturbing and sympathetic.
I'm not the same person that I was even remotely. I'm different in so many ways. They have a profound effect on the way that I relate to other people, the way I communicate.
Spader got the role, and after 1 week of rehearsal, they shot the entire film in August 1988 on a budget of just over $1 million. The movie follows Graham, an enigmatic drifter who rolls into Baton Rouge and complicates the lives of 3 residents by videotaping women discussing their sexual fantasies. Graham is impotent since his last relationship's collapse and finds gratification only through voyeuristic videotaping. During this period, Spader articulated his approach to acting, saying he liked playing character roles and didn't mind being a real SOB or embarrassing himself. He also displayed perfectionist tendencies, studying characters in detail and repeating rehearsals several times. The movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May 1989, where it won the Palme d'Or, making Soderbergh the youngest solo director to win at age 26. Spader won Best Actor at Cannes, a massive validation for an actor who'd spent 3 years playing preppy villains. The film went on to gross $24 million domestically, about 20 times the production cost, and was added to the Library of Congress National Film Registry in 2006. For Spader, this performance validated the transition from supporting villain to leading man, opening doors to bigger and more varied roles while shifting his career toward more sexually charged material. Bad Influence marked a significant departure for Spader because for the first time, he played the victim instead of the manipulator. The role of Michael Bohl, a meek, socially awkward marketing analyst, came to him through director Curtis Hanson, who was crafting a psychological thriller about manipulation. What made the casting particularly interesting was that Rob Lowe originally wanted to play Michael, the innocent doormat, but screenwriter David Koepp convinced him to take the villain role instead, leaving Spader to play against type. The film follows Michael, a born innocent who becomes entangled with Alex, played by Lowe, a sociopath who systematically destroys his life while pretending to help him gain confidence. Michael is the kind of guy who lets people walk all over him until Alex shows up and offers him a taste of power and rebellion that quickly spirals out of control. Roger Ebert praised Spader's cool apprehension and gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, while Vincent Canby at the New York Times lauded the acting and called it a refreshing exercise in glossy decadence. The production was overshadowed by the Rob Lowe videotape scandal, which broke during rehearsals, adding an uncomfortable meta layer to a film about videotaped secrets. The movie was a modest success commercially, and showed Hollywood that Spader could carry a film as a protagonist, even if that protagonist was far from heroic. The Music of Chance was a role so against type that critics noted he was such the polar opposite of his natural demeanor that you probably wouldn't even recognize him. Director Philip Haas adapted Paul Auster's 1990 novel and cast Spader as Jack Posey, a streetwise professional poker player and gambler, pairing him with Mandy Patinkin, who plays Jim Nash, the calm wanderer to Spader's volatile hustler. The story follows these 2 men who end up trapped in a surreal situation after losing a poker game to 2 eccentric millionaires, forced to build a stone wall in the middle of nowhere as payment for their debt. Jack is shallow, overconfident, and tetchy, a working-class grifter far removed from Spader's usual refined antagonists, and the transformation required him to shed every trace of the polished menace he'd become known for. The film showcased Spader's willingness to disappear into a character, even when that character offered none of the sophisticated appeal of his previous roles. It received a limited theatrical release and became one of those criminally underseen performances that only die-hard Spader fans would discover, proof that he was willing to take risks on small films between bigger projects, gambling on material that interested him even when nobody was watching. By 1994, Spader had become so identified with a specific type of role that when Mike Nichols cast him in Wolf, Roger Ebert described it perfectly as James Spader playing what can only be called the James Spader role, and playing it very nicely too. The part of Stuart Swinton came naturally because it was exactly what Hollywood expected from him. The corporate villain, the smooth-talking betrayer, the guy you love to watch scheme. The big-budget horror stars Jack Nicholson as Will Randall, a book editor who gets bitten by a wolf and begins transforming, with Michelle Pfeiffer as his love interest, and Christopher Plummer as the corporate shark orchestrating a hostile takeover. Spader plays Stuart, Will's treacherous protege who's sleeping with Will's wife and takes his job after the takeover, embodying everything predatory about modern business. Spader's Stewart is jackal-like, as vicious and as smiling a villain as someone might find in a Grimm's fairy tale or an MBA executive program. Stewart represents corporate villainy at its most polished, and in one of the movie's signature moments, Nicholson's character asserts dominance by urinating on Stewart's shoes while declaring, "I'm marking my territory," a scene that became instantly iconic. Wolf was Spader fully embracing the persona he'd built, the reliable antagonist who could elevate any scene with that trademark combination of intelligence and menace, proving that sometimes playing to type means you've perfected something worth repeating. The $55 million science fiction blockbuster cast Spader as Dr. Daniel Jackson, a brilliant but discredited Egyptologist whose theory that the Fourth Dynasty pharaohs didn't build the Great Pyramid has made him an academic outcast. The film opens with him being laughed out of the academy, evicted from his apartment with grants exhausted, before he's recruited to unlock the secrets of an ancient artifact called the Stargate. On-set tension with Kurt Russell became Hollywood legend. Producer Dean Devlin revealed in Variety's 25th anniversary interview that there was one day where Spader wouldn't come out of his trailer until they rewrote the scenes. It opened in October 1994 and became a major box office success. For Spader, it was his biggest commercial hit to date, a strange position for an actor who'd won Cannes just 5 years earlier for a small indie film. He'd admitted the Stargate script was awful and that he took the job for the money, and that candor revealed something about where he was headed. The experience of cashing a paycheck on a blockbuster he didn't believe in seemed to clarify what he actually valued, and in the years that followed, Spader would increasingly turn towards smaller films, and eventually television, where he could find the complex character work that interested him without the compromises that came with big-budget spectacle. David Cronenberg was adapting J.G. Ballard's 1973 novel about a subculture of symphophiliacs, people sexually aroused by car crashes, and he cast James Spader as James Ballard, a film producer whose car accident awakens deviant sexual desires. The film follows Ballard as he becomes entangled with a group led by Vaughn, played by Elias Koteas, who stages car crashes and seeks out accident victims. The material was deliberately provocative, exploring the intersection of technology, sexuality, and trauma in ways that made most people uncomfortable, which was exactly why Cronenberg wanted to make it and why Spader signed on. Spader noted that he sees the world through a sheer curtain of sensuality, maybe, and that's probably why some of his films seem forthright or explicit or provocative, saying he's interested in the disturbing compulsions and curiosities that are going to kill the cat. Reports indicate he had to deprogram himself after filming due to the psychological weight of the material, which gives you some sense of how deep he went into Ballard's headspace. The film premiered at Cannes in May 1996, where it won the Special Jury Prize and sparked immediate controversy that followed it through a troubled release. For Spader, Crash represented another step deeper into the kind of challenging, transgressive material that defined his film career, taking on a role so psychologically demanding that it required deprogramming, all in service of exploring the dark edges of human desire. Steven Shainberg was developing Secretary, an adaptation of a Mary Gateskill short story about a BDSM relationship between a boss and his secretary. And he needed an actor who could play E. Edward Gray, an emotionally repressed lawyer with specific practices, without making him a cartoon sadist. Spader came in and brought exactly what the role required, a mix of control and vulnerability. Gray isn't a typical dominant. He feels as much self-loathing as his secretary Lee does, and his own desires disturb him. He's obsessive-compulsive, collects red markers, meticulously cares for orchids, and exercises to exhaustion. Spader described the film as a very funny, sweet, lovely love story, very touching in a way, which tells you how he approached material others might have sensationalized. By this point in his career, Spader had developed a pattern of seeking out provocative material that other actors avoided. Secretary felt like a natural extension of that fearlessness, another opportunity to explore taboo subjects with the kind of intelligence and nuance that had become his signature. His working relationship with Maggie Gyllenhaal was intense and method-driven, with Spader maintaining clear boundaries that mirrored the dynamic between their characters. The film premiered at Sundance in January 2002, winning the Special Jury Prize for Originality, and became a cult success that cemented Spader's reputation for choosing complex, unconventional roles over safe commercial projects. The film became the perfect capstone to this phase of Spader's career, proof that his willingness to explore taboo subjects with intelligence and nuance had built something that would last long after the credits rolled. The pattern Spader established across these films, always choosing complexity over comfort and intelligence over commercial safety, would define the rest of his career. He continued working in features, appearing in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln in 2012 and voicing Ultron in Marvel's Avengers: Age of Ultron in 2015. But it was television where he found the home for the kind of work he'd been chasing. A 1997 guest appearance on Seinfeld, his Emmy-winning role as attorney Alan Shore on The Practice, and its spin-off Boston Legal, where he won 3 consecutive Emmys for playing the same morally ambiguous character across 2 different series. After a memorable turn as the enigmatic Robert California on The Office, he landed the role that would cement his legacy, Raymond Reddington on The Blacklist, a charming criminal mastermind who embodied everything Spader had been building since he turned down the romantic lead in Pretty in Pink to play the villain instead. From Steph McKee to Red Reddington, the through line remained constant. An actor who understood that the most interesting characters are the ones operating in the shadows, the ones you can't quite trust, but can't stop watching either.